Hello peeps, today we're going to be looking at the male 80s vinyl that I have. All my vinyl, I'm afraid, here is rather disorganised, which means that you'll probably find that there's one or two things in the wrong place here, and it should be all fantastically alphabetical, but I'm afraid it isn't. So I need to have a good source out of this, but we're going to have a little look. It's not every single item of vinyl on here. I've got my 80s, 90s, noughties and classical stuff all on one shelf here. I've got tons of stuff everywhere, other boxes and stuff all over there somewhere, and my Beatles stuff over there, my ABBA stuff up here. This is by and large my female stuff and some 70s stuff. I'm not quite sure quite why it's all organised like that, but anyway. Right, oh gosh, someone's done something to me on Facebook, how fabulous. Right, so, looking here at this shelf then, okay. Alright, I don't want those are irrelevant. Right, so we've got Dirk Wears White Socks. I'm not going to show every single album here, just to say that I was very fond of Adam Ant in the early part of the 1980s. I've got my friend Mark Jacobs, who's on YouTube, to thank for that one. So I've got Dirk Wears White Socks, Kings of the Wild Frontier, Prince Charming and Friend or Foe. I went to see Adam doing the Friend or Foe tour in 1982. He was fabulous. But I think probably my favourite, even though it's probably not his critically acclaimed, is probably Prince Charming, which has got Stand and Deliver on it and the track Prince Charming. Yes, I liked it. I just think I like the images as well, which is probably not very popular with other Ant fans who preferred the rawer stuff like the Kings of the Wild Frontier stuff and even the Dirk Wears White Socks stuff. Okay, so yeah, here is Mark Almond. I've got 3 Mark Almond albums here, probably out of sync with the alphabet, as it were. Vermin in Ermine, which I've hardly listened to because I think it's a bit damaged. My favourite of them, Stories of Johnny. There's a little extract from Stories of Johnny on my YouTube channel somewhere. Mark Almond, Enchanted. Okay. That, I think, has a track on it called A Lover Spurned. One of my favourite ones when I feel a bit annoyed about certain people. I just stick that track on. Oh look, I knew I was a bit disorganised. 2 Bangles albums. My favourite one, which is A Different Light. It's got Manic Monday on it, and it's which was written by Prince. But a stunning track towards the end of side 2 called Following, which is written by the bass guitarist Michael Steele. She didn't write that many of the Bangles tracks, at least that I know of, but that one is just a masterpiece, and yeah, it really, really makes the album, I think. And this is the one that's got Eternal Flame with it. It's called Everything. Don't listen to Eternal Flame unless it's being sung by the Bangles, because the Bangles are stunning. It's their song and they did it brilliantly. And Susanna Hoffs, gorgeous voice, gorgeous eyes, love her. Right, this is Blancmange. Now I got this quite recently because most of this stuff here I had on cassette in the 80s. A load of my cassettes got thrown away a few years ago because I didn't have a cassette player, and I just took some great big boxes that I had of them and just chucked them, which was probably not the best thing to do because really I should have kept some of them. I've got a few that have survived, but yeah, so this one I got again on vinyl. I have to say it sounds much better on vinyl. The sad thing about it is though that it doesn't have the full version of The Day Before You Came on it, which the cassette did. It had an edit, the singles edit. But still a great album and very diverse. It's not as electronica as people imagine that Blancmange actually were. The Boomtown Rats, Mondo Bongo. This is the one that's got Banana Republic on it, which is one of my favourite Boomtown Rats songs, and in fact I love this album altogether, probably more than I like this one, which is The Fine Art of Surfacing, which has got I Don't Like Mondays on it, but I've hardly listened to it at all. I'm one of these people that I love one album by a group, and then if another album doesn't immediately grab me, then I'm afraid that I sometimes ignore it. A bit like that, I'm afraid. Aha, Scoundrel Days. The first three Aha albums, the ones from from the mid to late 80s, absolutely adore. This is the only one I've got on vinyl. The others I've got on CD. And I have to say that Hunting High and Low really does not sound very good on CD. All About Eve. Another thing that annoyed me about the 80s was that because they were trying to flog the CD for all it was worth, they did all sorts of cunning tricks to make people think that CD was definitely better. Even the cheap all-in-one box systems that had a CD player on them, they weren't very good. They sounded disgusting, really. But in order to sort of perpetuate the myth, they had to make it. They had to sort of resort to a few things. Number one, what they did was made record players on those mid-80s systems so bad that they're so badly made, with really, really flimsy turntables, the crappiest possible cartridge they could put on the stylus. Vinyl was made so thin that that it sort of scratched and damaged very easily, which was the illusion that CDs are undamageable. I'll show you a bit later on exactly what I mean by that. And C, the last thing that they did was made the albums have as few tracks on as they could possibly get away with, and the CDs and tapes had bonus tracks on. The tapes are poorer quality, and the CDs at the time were more expensive, but it was just to encourage people to buy CDs, perpetuating this, this image of CDs longer playing times, which is true, but then, not necessarily were they better quality than vinyl. It's just that they played vinyl down a lot. Vinyl can offer extremely good quality. This one, what they did was they cut off a load of the good tracks, and when I had the cassette, there are a lot more tracks on here that I enjoyed. There's only 11 tracks on this one, and one of the tracks that I really enjoyed, and there was a bonus one, and I've forgotten what it's called. Arcadia. Spin-off group from Duran Duran. This one had Simon Le Bon and Nick Rhodes in it, and Roger Taylor, the drummer from Duran Duran. My favourite of the two split-off things. We'll come to the other one in a moment. This I never ever came off my Walkman. I had it on there basically for about 2 years. It was a real regular. Absolutely adored it. Okay, that's not relevant. Cameo, Word Up, absolutely adored it. Larry Blackman's Codpiece, a really good record actually. There are a couple of singles on there, I think. Word Up and Candy, or was it Word Up and Back and Forth? But yeah, really, really good. And don't listen to Mel B's version of Word Up. Listen to Cameo's. It is fantastic. I've got another copy of that there because one of them I think is damaged. The Cars. I have 2 Cars albums, and my favourite of them is the self-titled album, The Cars, because the drums in particular on this album, and on a lot of new wave albums from the early 80s, late 70s, like similarly with the Blondie stuff, so well recorded, really, really good, and the whole production is just of a sort of 4-piece guitar combo singing and playing in your living room, and the presence on this album is just unbelievable. Unlike this one, which has got Who's Gonna Take You Home on it. It's called Heartbeat City, and the production on it is just so over glossified, it's not true. And I'm just going to come over there, and for some reason or other, QuickTime wants to go into a screensaver mode, which is going to annoy me, because I'll have to start this again, and I've already done that once. Let's just see whether that's any better. Right, okay, right, so I need to be a bit quicker because I've just seen the length of this video. Bruce Cockburn, Canadian 80s singer-songwriter with a conscience, politico-y sort of person. World of Wonders, fabulous. Big Circumstance, even better. Love them both. If you're out for something obscure, then seek out some Bruce Cockburn. Spelt like Cockburn, but we won't dwell on that. Fantastic bloke here. I've got two Lloyd Cole albums on vinyl here. Rattlesnakes and Easy Pieces, and I'm not sure which one of them is my favourite. I love them both to pieces, absolutely. Brand New Friend, I think, from this album. And Lost Weekend. Lost Weekend was the sort of popular single from there. And from this album, oh, what do I like on here? Forest Fire, which is stunning. Are You Ready to Be Heartbroken? Oh, Rattlesnakes. Tori Amos did a very good version of Rattlesnakes. But yeah, Lloyd Cole, fantastic. Fantastic. That's irrelevant. Depeche Mode, A Broken Frame. Don't like too much of Depeche Mode, but some of their early stuff I like. This album is good, Broken Frame. And I like Construction Time Again as well. But not too much stuff from them. Aha, now we come to my Duran Duran stuff. Okay, right, I've not got a lot of their albums on vinyl, but I do have Rio, Seven and the Rag Tiger, which is probably better than I think Rio was. Had the Reflex on it, and New Moon on Monday, Union of the Snake, which were the singles. And Notorious, which is my favourite Duran Duran album. I don't have the one with Girls on Film and Planet Earth on at all, either on CD, cassette or vinyl. So if somebody wants to throw a vinyl one my way, I'll be very, very grateful to you. I said, if someone wants to throw a vinyl Duran Duran first album my way, I'd be very, very grateful. Erasure, The Circus, loved it. Right from, you know, it again, this was another album which followed me for years from its release, and I just couldn't put it down. This one and this one, which is The Innocents, loved them. And yeah, but they're ones that on sort of, they don't really stand the test of time. Most of the stuff here that I'm playing, that I'm talking about here, I think has actually stood the test of time quite well. Some of the Adam and the Ant stuff hasn't, but yeah, Erasure I don't think really has. Everything But the Girl, I have here two of their albums on vinyl, Idlewild and my favourite, The Language of Life. Love them both. Okay, now we're coming to Peter Gabriel. So, haven't got a lot of Peter Gabriel, but I have got So, and I like it. Kate Bush, Don't Give Up. I've got to do a Magical Musical Moments on that, so if anyone wants to remind me to do that, then yes. Ted Gärdestad, not really quite sure what this album's about here. It's called I'd Rather Write a Symphony. There is a song called I'd Rather Write a Symphony, which Ted recorded in about 1980, but don't know why on earth it's not on this album. That's really, really strange. But this is an album that he made in 1980, all in English. It doesn't do it for me in the way that his early 70s stuff in Swedish did it for me, which was, you know, a teen idol singing in Swedish and basically just doing his best at being, you know, discovering himself. And actually, dare I say it, really, his sexuality actually it's blatantly obvious, even to an English speaker, that, you know, that's what he was doing. This is just, you know, I'm trying to appeal to, you know, I'm still trying to appeal to my young fans and my teen idol sort of status, but I'm also, you know, just appealing to people that are into 80s production values and trying to be 1980s, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Just sing songs. Don't worry about the copious amounts of reverb and chorus that went on there. Bob Geldof. This is deep in the heart of nowhere. I like it, but I hardly ever listen to it. But I do like it. What else have I got here? That's not relevant. Go West. Played and 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 played to pieces in 1985. Loved it. And I've got some of their other stuff on cassette, which I really ought to try and find on vinyl. Bangs and Crashes is good. And So, although it didn't sell very well, was the second proper album, which the name of it escapes me at the moment, but I've got it somewhere on cassette. And I like it, but it would be better on vinyl. It's not as good on cassette. Halo James. Oh, 1989, just about. Is it 1989 or 1990? Can I talk about it? Oh, it's 1990. I can't talk about it, sorry. But I loved it. Human League, Dare. If you don't think record players do bass, then don't listen to Dare. Because they do bass. And Get Carter and I Am the Law, absolutely stunning. And Hysteria, the second album, which had Louise on it, and The Lebanon, which are a couple of my favourites as well. Right, I've got here 2 Michael Jackson albums, Thriller and Bad, both of which I had in the 80s, and both of which I liked, although I'm a take it or leave it with Michael Jackson, really. There's a lot of stuff of his I don't like, and I can only take him in quite small doses. But both of these albums are fantastic and will really make your record player sound very, very good indeed. Because the records are really stunning quality, better quality than the cassette, and the CDs at the time were a bit lame and limp. And any remasters of Michael Jackson have just been overly loudness ward. Take it from me. Okay. Now we get to Japan. Now, I've got a lot of their stuff on CD. What I have on vinyl is Quiet Life, which is a brilliant album. It was just before they made it into sort of, their sort of, I suppose, famous status. Yes, they were famous, but they were also a little bit, off beam as well, okay? But this was just before they reached their real fame status. Ends up with The Other Side of Life, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. This is the gatefold sleeve version here. Ouch, oh dear, don't do that to your albums, peoples. This Oil on Canvas is the live album that they did around about 1983, just before they split. And this was a retrospective exercising ghosts. Pretty similar track listings on both of these, except that obviously most of Oil on Canvas is live, but not all of it. Okay. Right, okay, moving on. Howard Jones. I've only got one Howard Jones album, I'm afraid, and it's this one, Humans Live, which is really, really good. I love it to pieces. I don't like Dream Into Action as much, and unfortunately I'm one of these people again that if a couple of their albums are off beam, then I tend not to buy the other ones and give them a chance, and perhaps I ought to. I'm sure stuff that Howard Jones has done recently is probably quite good. Even Nick Kershaw's got a new album out, peoples, but I don't have any Nick Kershaw at all, and Howard Jones and Nick Kershaw were compared like crazy in the 80s, because I think they both had the same producer and both came out around about the same time, and both male. Right, which obviously means they were the same, which they weren't, but Humans Live, fantastic. I think I probably preferred Howard Jones slightly more than Nick Kershaw, because Howard Jones... No, that's a lie. I don't know. I really don't know. Right, that's not relevant. That's not relevant. Is Lenny Kravitz relevant? Love this album anyway. Let Love Rule. I think it was 89. I hope it was 89, because then I can talk about it. That's not relevant. Right. Oh yes, as I was saying, Level 42. I had a friend who was a professional Level 42 fan, and yes, he encouraged me to buy some of this stuff. Running in the family though, this was Level 42 selling out, I'm afraid. I think their best album was the one that had The Chance Has Begun on it. True Colours, I think it was called. Yeah, this is a bit of a sellout, I'm afraid. Running in the Family, and I think it's probably what all the in-band squabbling was about. Okay, that's not supposed to be there. Right, okay. Bob Marley, legend, love him, or at least I love all those singles. Wait in Vain is one of my favourites, that's not relevant. Morrissey, Viva Hate, I have it in here, but I've hardly listened to it. It's because I've got a later Morrissey album, which I'm not going to talk about, but yeah, someone needs to encourage me to listen to that. That's not relevant. Aha, here we go, some more relevant stuff here. I'm going to talk about Gary Numan's Pleasure Principle album here, because although it's 79, I've got a load of other Gary Numan stuff as well. And I got hooked on Gary Numan in the 80s, again, because of my pal Mark, who I'll put his thingy in the description. Mark the Magic Man or something. Still performs now and is actually very good at it. So yeah, I've got the Pleasure Principle. I have got I Assassin and Telecom here, and I've also got Replica somewhere. I think it's probably under my Tubeway Army. This is the Fury. It's a coloured vinyl thing. It's actually snapped or broken, because coloured vinyl, it doesn't take up to the, see all this standing up here and falling over here. Coloured vinyl just doesn't take that, unfortunately, but I'm still keeping it because I don't want to throw it away. Right, the Pet Shop Boys. Please, first of all, stunning album. Really, really good. And again, the Pet Shop Boys, along with Arcadia and a few other albums that I've talked about there, they never ever left my cassette Walkman. And this one in particular was a real eye-opener to me growing up. And yeah, just adored it. Right? When I bought it on vinyl, a couple of years ago now, I will come up to the screen and I will show you that record is as thin as paper, and as such susceptible to lots and lots of scratches. But if you have a cartridge such as the Gold Rings or any of the Autofonds, even the lower end Autofonds like the 2M range, like the 2M Red even, which I say they're low end, but they're still not cheap, you know, they're still £60 or £70. Being, you know, with an arm that's as good as any of the Riga ones. I've got the RB700 on my P5, but, you know, any of the, even the earlier ones on the P2 and 3, they'll track this, and, you know, a tinny old crappy all-in-one system record player will not. Okay, and I know that because I've actually tried it. Actually, okay, slightly better quality vinyl here, and this album is really good. Love it, and I've talked about it in another video. Behaviour is probably my favourite now. Has a really, really nice mood and atmosphere on it, which I just think is gorgeous. Right, oh, and I've got Disco here. This is damaged, and this is damaged, and even my Gold Ring won't track it, so I'm not going to play it on here at any time. I've also got Introspective as well, which I've put I Want a Dog on my channel, which is a really good one to listen to. So those two are the remix albums. The second Duran Duran spin-off, or in chronologically the first Duran Duran spin-off, alphabetically the second, Power Station. This was John Taylor and Andy Taylor with Robert Palmer, R.I.P., God bless him, and some guy from Chic, Bernard Edwards. Oh, and someone called Tony Thompson as well. But yeah, that was the power station. Me and my pal, we used to cover. I used to have a band, which I'm not going to put on YouTube anytime soon because yeah, I think we needed more practice. Was probably one of the best things that could be said about us. But yeah, we covered Get It On. From here, we took this version of it, Get It On. But there's a really good version of Harvest for the World on here as well. And yeah, the other ones are original tracks. Some Like It Hot was the big single. Very, very 80s huge drum sound with tons and tons of reverb on it, whereas Arcadia is much more intimate. You know, this one really played to the there was a, sort of two opposing sort of philosophies really. One was make it sound like it's been plugged into the desk. Witnessed an awful lot in the 70s on albums, the sort of American AOR albums like the Eagles and stuff like that. The other one, which was try and make it sound as live as possible. CBS really championed that sort of way, and traced back to the early 60s Dylan LPs and that sort of thing, taken to absolutely ludicrous extremes in the 80s, where rather than just make it sound like it was recorded in a room, make it sound like it was recorded in a canyon somewhere with huge cavernous walls, and and that was the absolute pinnacle of it really. Prefab Sprouts here, really love the single on here, which is When Love Breaks Down. I've played some of this Prefab Sprout album from Langley Park to Memphis on YouTube. Now we come to Prince, who in the 80s I absolutely adored, and I've got loads of his albums here. Controversy, my favourite, I think, out of my albums that I've got here. I've got some of his stuff on CD as well. Purple Rain, which is the real commercial one. 1999 I've got on CD, which came in between those two. Parade, good, but not as good, I don't think, as Sign of the Times, which is a double album, and really, 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 really stunning. Okay, if you want Prince at his best, you can't do any better than get that album. It's really good. Love Sexy, which I think is just as good. If you buy it on CD, it's one of those very few CD albums where it's all one track, because there's no gap in between it. And on this, you obviously have to turn it over, but yeah. And then Batman, which I've got by Prince. Loved him in the 80s, absolutely loved him, and still have a soft spot for him now, but I'm not as sold on all his overtly sexual stuff, and anything that he's made post about 1988 I'm not really all that keen about. I've got his 31 album or something or other that it's called. Doesn't really do it for me, I'm afraid. Queen, Greatest Hits. In the 70s, oh, sorry, that's the 70s. Irrelevant. Okay, that's the 90s then. Chris Rea, On the Beach. Just love it for that guitar riff. Automatic. Oh, does Automatic for the People count? What was that, 1989? Please be 1989, because that's a stunning album. So many memories I've got of that album in about 1990, something like that, and I think it was released before then. 1989 or something. Please be 1989, because I want to include you in this video. Tom Robinson, Hope and Glory. Very underrated artist, but good album. That's 70s. Avalon, Roxy Music. Lovely. Really good. Tick and Tock, Intolerance. Tick and Tock, Intolerance. You can't get any more obscure than Tick and Tock. They supported Gary Newman a lot on his tours in the early to mid 80s. They fell out with him, but this was an album that they made sort of semi in conjunction with him. He wrote one of the songs on here called A Child with the Ghost. There's a good cover version of A Higher Ground by Stevie Wonder. They were better mime artists than they were singers though. But yeah, this album's a bit crackly for my liking. That's not relevant. Clacton Library, 1988. I borrowed that and I forgot that I had it and never took it back, and probably the fine on it is going to be absolutely massive now if I ever go anywhere near Clacton Library again. If you're watching Clacton Library, please be nice to me and don't try and demand this back. Ruchi Sakamoto, New Illustrated Musical Encyclopedia. Very, very, very good. Very entertaining. If you want to know anything about how entertaining stereo is, listen to that. Really, really good. Largely instrumental, but it's got a guest spot on there from Thomas Dolby. Adrian Snell, 2 Adrian Snell albums here. This is Alpha and Omega. He's from one of these Christian record label things. I don't really hold to too much of this, you know, I'm a Christian and therefore I release all my music on a Christian record label. This is on Myrrh Records. It's not too evangelical, which I quite like really, because you know, this is just a musical really, and it's basically just very, very good. Alpha and Omega. Haven't listened to it for yonks though. My favourite of his is The Song of an Exile, which is lots of Jewish poetry, which has been set to music, and it just has me in tears. And if I really concentrate and I listen to this all the way through, there's some absolutely stunning saxophone on here that's just so tearful, and then it gets to the end, If I Were, and I'm just absolutely blubbering in tears. The poetry on here, there's a couple of poems on here from the Holocaust, yeah, it's just so tear-jerking. I think I've put one of his on YouTube, but I had to edit it at the time because it was where things didn't go more than 10 minutes long, and I wanted to put there was a track on there that probably made the 10 minutes slot, or whatever, and I edited it a little bit. That's not relevant. Bruce Springsteen. This is another one of those sort of, you know, the CBS sort of, you know, drums recorded in a cavern style sort of albums here. Born in the USA. Quite like it, but you know, it's not it's not one of my iconic favourites, as it were. Sly and Robbie, Rhythm Killers, love it. Absolutely love it. Fantastic album here, and really and truthfully, again, this was not everybody's sort of, you know, on everybody's album thing in the 80s. Slightly obscure, but very good. Simply Red, picture book, love it. Hi-fi reviewing track here is Sad Old Red. If that double bass sounds like it's standing on the floor with somebody plucking the strings and fingering the fretboard, then it's doing its job. This one, Men and Women, was probably my favourite of the Simply Reds though. I did have the other one, the one they did after that on cassette, but don't anymore. That one is not relevant. David Sylvian. Oh, David Sylvian, I'm coming to the end, people. I know that this has been a long video, but I'm coming to the end. David Sylvian, Brilliant Trees. Absolutely stunningly beautiful, and I've put one of his tracks on, so I won't harbour on it for too long, but again, this album accompanied me everywhere I went, and you know, I just used to sit there and just conjure up the images that I was getting from this album, you know, and yeah, and this one as well, you know, being, you know, going down into the underworld and that sort of thing. I listened to this with Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique as well. It's just beautiful. Secrets of the Beehive. This is the unadulterated album as it was first released. The last track on it should be Waterfront. The CD had True Colour, Forbidden Colours on it with Ruchi Sakamoto, which I've got, but this is how it should be. It's got to end with the waterfront. This is where all the bonus tracks on albums really doesn't do it for me, because this has got to leave you absolutely stunned and begging for more. And if you've got another track after it, it kills the illusion. Really does. Tears for Fears. Another band that I loved in the 1980s. And this particular album, The Hurting, again, it's just an album that I really, really identified with. And, this image on the front of this child, just loved it. Songs from the Big Chair, their great big commercial album, turned them into stadium rockers, as it were, and they didn't really like it, and they had to call it for a few years, I think, because they very nearly split up. Then this is the album, and then they did split up after this album for a little while. The Seeds of Love, beautiful album, and each of these albums, the 3 Tears for Fears albums, is different from the other ones. And because they're different, you don't get this awful sameness which you get with pop group after pop group after pop group. This one is very, very real, even though most of it was done on a Fairlight synthesizer, which was insanely complicated to work. It has a very real sort of feel about it, and it's helped by Alita Adams, who sang Get Here If You Can. She sang a couple of songs on here and played the piano on it as well, and just gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. Terence Trent D'Arby, loved it again, loved it to pieces. If You All Get to Heaven, listen to that now, because it's just so relevant. Don't know what that is, I don't even know why it's there. The 1980s would never have been complete without a group called the Thompson Twins. They became incredibly unpopular and badly and untrendy towards the late 80s. But in the early 80s, Quick Step and Sidekick, what a fantastic album that was. Love on Your Side, brilliant. Yeah, very, very good. We Are Detective, fantastic. And then Into the Gap, which again was their sort of multi-squillion seller album. Couldn't get enough of it, really. Then there were all the remixes that were on albums, and then finally, in about the late 80s, they made another album, and it wasn't anywhere near as good, and they kind of lost the impetus, really. That's not relevant. Toto, early 80s techno geeks, but still a good album. Lots of this is American AOR, really, and American sort of studio production tricks at their worst, but also at their very best. Africa is fantastic. Rosanna is fantastic as well. Really good. Tube by Army, Gary Newman replicas. This is a reissue of it, but yeah, probably Gary's iconic album. Really good. That one and Telecom. If you want 2 good Gary Newman albums, get those. And U2, The Unforgettable Fire. Only a few songs that I really like on here. Me and my pal used to do New Year's Day. Is that on this one? No, I don't believe it is. Pride in the Name of Love is on here. But New Year's Day we used to do, and yes, I quite liked it. I've got here the Joshua Tree as well, but only because you should have it in your collection. It's not actually one that I listen to a huge amount, I'm afraid. And this one, why have I got this album? I think it came from a charity shop and I think I just picked it up. It's the Memphis Sessions, probably Wet Wet Wet's. Probably Wet Wet Wet's best album, because it's just remixes of of stuff that they did for their first album, and much more soulful, much more real. Okay, we are nearly at the end. That's not relevant. That one is though. Stevie Wonder, Hotter Than July. I've got next to it Songs in the Key of Life, which is from the 70s, but it's still amazing. But Hotter Than July is a very, very good album. Love it. It's got Happy Birthday to You on it. That's not relevant, I don't think. Paul Young, No Parlay. Again, Paul Young sort of disappeared off the scene for a little while. He's still going, but you know, he sort of had 2 albums in the 80s, and then people forgot who he was. But yeah, this is a good album. It's got Living in the Love of the Common People on, which is good. Graceland by Paul Simon, stunningly good, even now. And still, you know, the production on there is still relevant in the 90s. That's not relevant. And finally, Xanadu. Yeah, loved the film Xanadu. But, you know, I think I was about 13 or something when this came out. ELO contributed a lot to it, and it's good. You know, ELO can be slightly bombastic in their production values, but this is sort of, it's them at their best. All right. Okay, so that concludes my male pop group, or mainly male pop group, 80s stuff. Okay, it's taken a very long time to go through it all. But yes, I hope that it's been of some interest.